Are you looking for a fall dessert that isn't pumpkin or even apple? Why not try maple? This is my maple cake with maple icing. It's only one bite for this serving, and there is a surprise ingredient that keeps the bite so low. And it's coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I am a home cook and amateur baker, and I am here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Today is going to be one of mine, but it's an adaptation of a recipe that I found on Glen and Friends Cooking on YouTube. In April 2020, a lot of people were having difficulty finding flour, so he created this flourless maple cake with a maple icing. I'm not going flourless, but you can if you'd like to. So yes, we're still in the autumn flavors using maple this time, just to give people a break from all the pumpkin spice stuff that's coming out. For those of you who aren't fans, I'm a giant fan of pumpkin spice. So there is some pumpkin in here, but you won't taste it. And there will be pumpkin items coming up very soon, so pumpkin lovers unite. This is, as I said, a maple cake with maple icing. Now, I'm gonna go over the cake components first because we're gonna have to let the cake cool completely before we frost it or ice it. So, the one ingredient that may throw people off is right here. White beans. Yes, white beans. There are recipes using black beans to make brownies, and Glen on his channel decided to use some white beans. I believe he used navy beans. I'm using cannellini beans. Any white bean should do, because white bean won't affect the flavor as much as like a darker bean would. So there are two 15.5-ounce cans of white beans, drained and rinsed and left in this bowl. Then we have the real star of the show, is a 1/2 cup of sugar-free maple syrup. There's a 1/2 cup of pumpkin. Now make sure it's pumpkin puree and not pumpkin pie mix, which already has sweeteners and seasonings and stuff incorporated. You don't want that, you just want pure pumpkin puree. Now you won't taste the pumpkin in this, I promise you. But for those of you who are adverse to using pumpkin or prefer to use something else because you already have that on hand, you could replace it with applesauce. But strain the applesauce the night before to get as much moisture out as you can, because applesauce is much more liquid than the pumpkin. So you want to get some of that moisture out. And if you wanted, you could probably use a 1/2 cup of banana. I've not used it, so I don't know how that would affect the flavor. I know the pumpkin does not, and I don't believe the apple would either. I'm not sure about the banana, but you could try using a 1/2 cup of mashed banana if you prefer, and you wouldn't have to drain that because it would have about the same consistency of the pumpkin. To amp up that maple flavor, because this is maple cake, we want it to taste like maple, I have 2 teaspoons of maple extract. You could replace it with vanilla extract or another extract, but it will dull the maple flavor. So it is worth investing in a little thing of maple extract for this cake. We also have 4 eggs here. Also some baking spray. We're gonna have our 8-inch square pan sprayed, and I'm also going to line it with a sling so it'll be easy to come out. You don't have to. You could leave it just as it is and take the cake out another way. I enjoy using a sling, especially since this is going to come out fairly soon, like 10 minutes after it's been baked, so it'll still be soft. So I want to make sure it has that support and let it cool that way. We also have some salt. I kept it in the container because you just need a pinch of salt, and I figured I would just show you. It is an actual pinch. Just reach in, pinch. It would be about maybe half of an 1/8 teaspoon measure if you actually wanted to measure it, but I don't measure it, not when it calls for so little. We also have 3/4 of a cup of flour. Now you could, as I said, make this flourless by using almond flour or something else, but that would affect the bites or points. And then there is 2 teaspoons of baking powder. So those are the cake components. This is not going to be a light, fluffy cake. This is going to be a dense cake. But to me, that's kind of symbolic of fall, that dense, comforting texture. So we are going to use the food processor for this. Because of the beans, you need them ground up pretty well. You could probably use a blender. You may need to move things around a lot and keep trying. I haven't tried it that way, but I'm sure you could. And I think there would be enough liquid with the syrup and the eggs to make it not too problematic for you. So a blender is also an option. But I'm going to grab my food processor and we are going to move on. Okay, so food processor is ready. We are going to dump in our beans, our maple syrup. I want to get all of that maple in here because this is a maple cake, as I said, so you want all of that delicious maple flavor. Okay, the pumpkin. And the extract. Now we're not going to put in the eggs just yet because you don't want to overwork the eggs, and we don't need to pulse this. We're going to just let it run. So we're going to turn it on. Now I'm going to take this out because what we're going to do while the food processor is running, or the blender if you were using a blender. My arms, one of these days. We're going to pour the eggs in one at a time. Now, you might say, but you put all 4 in the bowl. How are you going to get them in there one at a time? Usually eggs, even while they're in a bowl like this, are holding on to their structure, not like my arms. So you can pour one in at a time. I'll show you as we go along. I won't speak much during the processing because I'm going to try to dim the noise a little bit so that it doesn't get too distracting. This isn't a loud processor, but anyway, so we're going to process this and then I will slowly add in the eggs one at a time. Okay, before I go on with the eggs, I wanted you to see, this is the texture. That's about where you want to start adding in your eggs. You don't really see many beans. It's just like a giant paste now. So that is the point where you want to add in the eggs. As I said, one at a time. So here we go. Okay, so I'm going to turn that off for a second just to wipe off any little beans that I see on the side so they can be incorporated. But you can see now it's very wet, very fluid. Definitely not like a bunch of beans all ground up. No hummus here. So I'm just going to process this up for another minute and then we will be ready to move on. Now we're going to transfer this into a bowl. You don't want to add the flour in here because it will process too much and make it too tough when you're eating the cake. You don't want to overwork flour in cakes or anything soft, muffins, that kind of thing. So just going to set that blade in there for a second so I can clean out the bowl, and then I will clean off the blade. And it's got a real nice mapley color to it, kind of like almost like a honey. And speaking of which, you could use other sweeteners if you wanted to. You could make this into a honey cake. Obviously, honey would add more bites or points, but you could do that. There's also, Sucrin has a honey substitute kind of thing that you could use if you wanted to go that route instead of maple. All right, oh, I don't know why I got rid of this. I need to clean off my blade. Okay, now we're just going to add in the dry ingredients. The flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, not baking soda, and just an actual pinch of salt. When it calls for a pinch, it really means a pinch. But like I said, it would be a little less than like 1/2 of a teaspoon if you felt like measuring it. And we're just gonna fold this in so that we're not overworking the flour. Because you still, even though this is kind of a dense cake, as I said, you don't want it to be tough as well. But you can see it's already, even with just a little bit of flour, only 3/4 of a cup, it's already pretty thick. And that's in part due to using the beans. Okay, let me set this over here so I can prepare the pan, and I will show, and I will show once again how I do a sling for baking, in case this is the first time you're seeing one of my cake type videos. Now you might be saying, why are you spraying it now if you're putting a sling in? The PAM will actually help the parchment paper to stick to the pan rather than sliding all over the place. And I'm going to just fold up here and make little marks of where it should be, and then go in a little bit from those marks. And the same thing on this side. And then you just drape it in there and make sure it gets into the corners. So you get nice clean lines on your cake, because this isn't going to be frosted all over. It's just going to have an icing on the top. All right, so I am going to spray, even though parchment is non-stick, I am going to give a little insurance of a little more baking spray. In goes the cake batter. I mean, that color, hello. What are you doing here? Would help if my arms cooperated with me. And then I am just going to even this all out as much as I can. You don't have to be crazy, because it is, as you can see, pretty fluid. So it'll go with just a little gentle pushing into the corners. And I will scrape this bit that fell onto the paper back in. And what I will also do to remove any air bubbles in the cake is tap it a few times. I will show you, but I will reduce the sound so it doesn't deafen you at the same time. So I don't know if you could see, there were a couple little air bubbles that did come up and pop. So they are no longer in the cake that are gonna make little pockets. So this is gonna go into a 375-degree oven for 30 to 40 minutes until a toothpick inserted comes out with a few moist crumbs. You don't want it completely dry because it's still gonna cook a little bit once it comes out of the oven because the pan will still be hot. So let me get this in the oven and we will be back when I take it out. Okay, there you have it. The maple cake part of our program. And I'm going to let this sit in the pan for about 5 minutes before I remove it and then let it cool completely on the rack. Okay, so it has been about 5 minutes. Now I've kept my oven mitts on the sides. I always do that just to remind myself or anyone else that this is a hot pan, just so nobody gets burned. It is still a bit hot because it's only been about 5 minutes. So what I'm going to do is move the pan off of the rack because we have to move the cake onto it. All right, so you'll notice there's a lot of cracks on the top. That's normal. They're going to be covered up with our icing afterward anyways. But you just want this to cool completely. Now, if you did not have the sling, if you did not want to make a sling, what you would do is take a plate or another pan or something, put it on top, flip it, and then remove the pan and put the cake onto the cooling rack. But this does make things much easier. And you don't want it in the pan for too long to cool because a lot of that heat and steam is going to turn to moisture and make this a soggy cake. You don't want that. So that's why we took it out early. I'm going to let it sit here. It's going to cool. I will be back and show you how to make a quick maple icing using my light homemade cream cheese, although you can use any cream cheese you want, but mine would make it 0 bites. So I will be back in a moment and show you the frosting. Okay, we are back. The cake has had a chance to cool. It cooled, I probably let it cool for a couple of hours just to make sure it was at a good temperature and I had dinner and things in between. And so now it is time to make the frosting or the icing for our cake. What you're gonna need is 4 ounces or ½ a cup of the light homemade cream cheese that's on my blog. I have a video, my first video for it. I'm actually thinking of taking that section out of the introduction and making it its own separate video so that it's easier to access. If that sounds interesting to you, just leave a comment down below if that'd be easier to just find it that way. Okay, so there's 4 ounces or ½ cup and I have it at room temperature. I've had it out for maybe about half an hour, 45 minutes. There is some salt because you're going to use, again, a pinch of salt, especially in the frosting with the sweetness of the confectioner's sugar that we're going to use. You want a little bit of salt to counterbalance it and bring out the flavors. Now, speaking of the confectioner sugar, this is a ½ a cup of confectioner sugar replacement. I use Swerve. This is the one I like. Again, I'm not sponsored by them or by the syrup people, but this is the one I like to use. I'm sure there are others out there, but this is my preference if you wanted to know what the bag looked like. Now it's gone. We have a tablespoon of maple syrup. It's the Vermont sugar-free that I like to use. You could have a 1/4 cup of this for 0 bites, 0 blue points, probably any of the other colors on WW, I assume. And again, not sponsored, just I really like this. The flavor is good, and 1/4 cup for 0 bites. So it's worth looking into if you can find it. They're out of here. Last thing is a teaspoon of the maple extract. We want to enhance that maple flavor in this frosting. So what we're going to do is bring in the mixer. Ta-da! And we are going to dump in, I usually add in the liquid items first and blend those in with the cream cheese before putting in the confectioner sugar. So cover your ears. I think by adding the liquids in, then mixing it into the cream cheese, it gets all that liquid flavor incorporated more evenly in the cream cheese. Then we're going to add in our pinch of salt, voila, and our confectioner sugar. Now, before I start mixing this with the mixer, because it is very powdery, I'm going to stir it a little bit with the spatula first. So that way I can dampen some of that sugar without having it hopefully fly all over the place. Because you know I like to throw things around in the kitchen, so I'm hoping to avoid doing that. Okay, watch your ears once more. Here we go. Don't need you anymore. Now we're going to bring the cake in, and we're just frosting the top of it. And I have an offset spatula just because it makes it easier to spread around, but if you don't have one, just use a butter knife or whatever you would use to frost cakes or cupcakes. And just, whoa. If my arms will cooperate, I will cover this as evenly as I can. I am getting a little twitchy. I'm not exactly sure why, but that's the way this goes. For those of you who may not know, I have myopathy and neuropathy, so my muscles and nerves don't always work correctly. So that's why I get twitchy. Trying to be precise is sometimes a little difficult, but I think that's pretty good. Could be better, but I don't have the control I once did. Okay, so there you have it. That is the maple cake with maple icing. I know it was probably weird making a cake with beans, but you won't even be able to tell they're in there. My friend Kim from A Girl in Her Phone has tried it, and she liked it. So we have her stamp of approval. What makes it even better is this makes 8 servings. Each serving is only 1 Better Balanced bite or 1 blue point on WW. Not sure about the other colors. I know the eggs, I think on green would count. So you'd have to calculate that for yourself in the recipe builder. But for those on blue or Better Balance, this is 1 bite a serving. Now if you're counting calories, this would be 233 calories. And if you're doing macros, the fat would be 2.8 grams. The carbs would be 46.5 grams, and the protein would be 14.5 grams. So there you have it, a nice fall treat It's not pumpkin, it's not apple. You got yourself a little maple treat here. So if you liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. I would really appreciate that. And subscribe to the channel if you have not already and are looking for some weight loss recipes. I have quite a collection right now, and I have a few playlists that are starting to build up. I'm going to add this one to my desserts playlist. So if you're looking for desserts, there's a card right here that you can check out that'll show all of the desserts that I've done so far. So do subscribe to the channel for any sort of weight loss recipes that you may be looking for. I may have them, or I may be able to do them. And hit the notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video. Comment down below what your thoughts are on maple, if you enjoy having alternatives to pumpkin spice, which is everywhere. And share this recipe if you think someone you know who's on a weight loss journey would be interested in trying this. And while you are at it, follow me over on social media. I'll leave my Instagram handle here, as well as 2 Facebook groups that I am a part of. I am the sole admin on Recipes with Roy, my own Facebook group. And I am the co-admin with Jennifer Lynn from the Jennifer Lynn channel, as well as Bree Coleman from Balancing a Life with Bree. We are the co-admins on Finding Our Way, W-E-I-G-H. And I'll show you the icon here so you know if you found the right spot. So I hope you will give this delicious fall dessert a try and let me know what you think. I am going to go have some of this myself right now. So until next time, bye.